it was just wow. And I remember it snowed that day too. Ooh, girl. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. I was like, I cannot live here if it's gonna smell like this all the time. And we discovered that it was the water. My water stank like rotten eggs, girl. It was nasty. Hey y'all, my name is Joyce and you're listening to Transplants, the podcast for moving 20-somethings in a new city trying to figure out the trials and tribulations of adulthood. Because same sister. Welcome to the first episode of Transplants. I'm so excited to be here, to be joining you today from my couch. If you didn't listen to the podcast trailer, definitely listen to that. But Transplants is a podcast that I wanted to start because I moved to Columbus from Texas about a year and a half ago, right out of college to start my first job post-grad. Came to the city not knowing anyone, and it has been, a journey for sure. I've learned a lot, I've grown up a lot, and I feel like I just wanted to start this podcast to help others who are about to go through that same thing or are currently going through that same thing, and provide not only community but resources for figuring out how to move, because luckily I had like my parents and friends and stuff, but not everyone has that. So Transplants now exists. I'm very excited to start this podcast. Hopefully it can grow into a community all across the country and help people find some new friends in adulthood, because that can be hard, and just all the things. But in today's episode, we're going to start off with the basics and talk about moving 101, since that's essentially what this whole podcast is about, right? Moving to a new city and being a transplant. So let's start at the very beginning and start with moving, because how does one move? What do you need to move? What do you need when you get to the new city? There's a lot of things to consider that we're going to talk about throughout this episode. I'll give you like all the things that I went through when I moved, and hopefully it'll answer all your questions. If not, definitely follow us on social media. I'll be super engaged on there. And if you have any other questions after listening to this episode, reach out and I will do the best that I can to assist. Although I'm not an expert, All right, so let's jump right into it. Starting off with my story. So I graduated from college in December 2021, and I started my first big girl corporate job at the very end of January 31st. So I had like a month, 2 months to like not be in college and kind of figure out how to move across the country. Which in hindsight, I wish I had more time, but that was the start date that I was given, so I didn't really have much of a say. But if you can get your start date pushed post-grad, like before you start your first job, get that offer date pushed so you have maybe like 6 months to not do anything, maybe travel, do whatever you want. I would highly recommend doing that, because your girl was a high achiever in school and was definitely burnt out by the time I finished college, and did not have a lot of time to recover from that before starting my job. So here we are, but story for another day. Okay. So, I had about 2 months to figure everything out. I definitely felt nervous because one, never been to Ohio before. And two, didn't know anybody in Ohio before moving. So that was definitely something that I had to work through. But at the same time, I moved 3 hours away from home for college, which is obviously not that far in comparison to the distance between Columbus and Texas. But I had a little bit of experience moving away from home and being the eldest daughter in an immigrant household. Shout out to you if you know, but you have to grow up very quickly and be very independent at a young age. So I've always had that, independence, and I felt somewhat okay with everything, but was definitely still nervous and a little bit overwhelmed with just moving and like getting all my stuff across a couple states. But yeah, it was definitely a journey, and I moved in the winter in Ohio. It was just not fun. I remember it started snowing one day, and obviously from being a girl from Texas, I was not prepared for that. So I was just going through it, but we live to tell the tale. I have my laptop down here with my notes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, pardon me, I will be looking down a lot. But generally speaking, you can think of moving in 3 parts. So you have your before, which is where you're considering where you're going to move, how much it will cost. You have during the move, which is how is my stuff going to get there? What do I need? And then after, which is settling in and what is like the bare minimum I need to survive in this place. If you want to think about it in another way, basically there are 4 questions that you need to ask yourself when moving. Where are you going? How are you getting there? How is your stuff getting there? And what are the essentials that you need once you get to where you're going? And like I said, we're going to answer all these questions as we go through this podcast episode. Starting off with apartment hunting. So apartment hunting can be a long, excruciating process, but once you do it, you'll feel so good about like the space you're in. So definitely take the time to like really think about the place that you're going to be in. But starting off, you really need to make your list of needs and nice to haves. I personally just kept that in my notes app. Some examples that you might have on your list are like in-unit washer and dryer, parking available like for yourself and like for guests if like your friends want to come over, walking distance to like a park or something if you have a dog. There are a bunch of different things to consider, but definitely start by making a list of things that you want or need in your future apartment. As you're apartment hunting, I definitely recommend making a spreadsheet of all the places that you're looking at, starting off by putting things in like columns. So you'll have a column for the apartment complex name, like the income requirements, where it's located, amenities, things like that, just so that you have everything in one space and it's easy to refer to. On that note, for income requirements, that's super important to take into consideration, especially if this is like your first move post-grad. You might not necessarily have like the bills and like the receipts to give apartment complexes, but they'll usually take like your offer letter as proof of income. So definitely keep that in mind when apartment hunting, because that's essentially what I did. Once you have your offer letter, if you're moving right after graduating, you can take your salary that's in the letter and start figuring out basically how much it's going to cost you to live in whatever city you're going to. NerdWallet has a really good cost of living calculator that will allow you to compare like how much it's going to cost for you to live between 2 cities. So if you want to do that and you're already like making an income wherever you are, that can be a helpful resource to you. So I would highly recommend that. But generally speaking, in terms of living situation, the financial experts, as they say, recommend having about 30% of your income go towards your living expenses. And that is definitely called out in budgeting resources if you consider the 50-30-20 rule. Oh, just kidding. That's wrong actually, because 50-30-20 isn't 50 like utilities and stuff, and then 30 is bills. And actually, you know what? I don't even know. But generally speaking, they recommend about 30% of your income going to your rent. So hopefully that will help you figure out how much you can afford for rent when you're apartment hunting. Pro tip, when you are looking for apartments, you should ask the places that you're looking at if your company is a preferred employer, especially if you are doing this process post-grad. I was able to do that, and I got, I think, my security deposit waived or like application fee waived. It was something like that. But if your company is a preferred employer for like said apartment complex, they'll usually give you like some type of discount, which is really great because we love saving coin. Hello. In addition to that, there are obviously a bunch of different questions that you may want to ask when you're like touring places or doing your research online, some of which include average utilities if they're not included in the rent, the noise level at night, especially if you trying to get your sleep, how maintenance works, and if that's like on site included in like the apartment complex, restrictions on decorating, if you want to paint, do all that fun stuff. I also, when I was touring, I liked to ask my tour guide, I guess, how they would decorate the space or like set it up, or how previous tenants had set up previous units, because looking around at my apartment now, I wanted like a little dining table where I could eat, and there literally is no room to do that. And glad I didn't buy one in advance or like prioritize that, because there would have been no room for that. And now I just sit on the floor or on my couch when I eat, which is fine. I love that. It's just easier to get your mind thinking about these things in advance so that you're not buying a lot of things before your move, or buying them like right as you move and then realize, oh, I don't have space for this. In addition to all that, you definitely want to consider how far your commute to work would be, wherever you're living. Ooh, excuse me. I wonder how that sounds. Oh my gosh. That might or might not happen frequently on this podcast because I be a burper. But anyways, there are lots of other things to consider too when looking for an apartment, like how far your commute to work would be, because don't nobody like sitting in traffic. And that's one thing I'll give Ohio. There's not a lot of traffic in comparison to Texas. Oh, dear Lord. Love that for me. But your commute to work is definitely a big thing. How close you are to like friends, or like, obviously if you don't have friends, how close you are to like nightlife or like downtown or where the youngins are hanging out, you know what I mean? That's definitely something you want to consider as well, especially if you don't know anybody in the city. You want to be super close to where all the action is. If you want to be close to nature, that's also something to consider as well. So look up parks nearby, all that fun stuff. Safety, also a big thing, especially if you're a woman living alone in a new city. Pro tip, if you're able to drive by the apartment complex at night just to see what the vibe is, because at night is when people get crazy and you just want to make sure that you're going to be moving to a safe place. So if you can, drive by the place at night, get one of your friends or family to do so. But obviously if you're in a different state, that may not be possible. So I recommend also utilizing TikTok and social media as much as you can to do research on wherever you're moving, the different areas that there are, the different things to do. Because TikTok is full of so many great things, and it's such a great tool to connect with people, learn more about where you're about to move at. And yeah, I would highly recommend starting like a little collection on your TikTok account and doing the research that way if you can. Here are also a few good websites that you can use when apartment hunting: apartments.com, apartment list, apartment finder. And one thing that I also really like that I feel like not a lot of people may talk about is Facebook groups. So before you move, try and join like the Facebook group that's, I guess, tied to the city that you're moving to. So I live in Columbus. There's a Facebook group called Columbus Girl Gang, and I feel like that's a rather popular name for a lot of different cities. Like there'll be Dallas Girl Gang or like Austin Girl Gang or something like that. Something pertaining to the girlies, okay? Fellas, I don't know if there's something for you out there, but I would assume so, because, I mean, why not? But essentially, join a Facebook group specific to the city that you're moving to and see if people are like subletting their room or looking for roommates, blah, 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 because that's an easy way to connect with people, make friends, but also find like a place to live through somebody who's already living there and already has a perspective of what it's like to live there. So I definitely think that'll be a helpful resource. There's also like extensions of said Facebook groups. So there'll be like Columbus Girl Gang - roommate finder, or like subletting group or something like that. So you can join like the general group, but also the group that pertains to like finding living situations. So that can be a super helpful tool as well. Also, if you join one of those groups, you could probably sublet someone's room for like a period of time before you actually make your big move to whatever city you're going to. And I feel like that would also be like a super easy way for you to like dip your toe in the water in whatever city you're going to, because it's a little bit more low stakes if you're subletting someone else's room. They already have like furniture or whatever, and you're only there for like a couple months or so. You get to not necessarily worry about your living situation and kind of just explore where you're going to be with low stakes. So if that's something that you're willing and able to do, definitely try subletting someone's place and then use that time period to go on apartment tours, see the city, do things like that before signing your own lease. Once you're ready to sign your lease, I recommend setting your move-in date at the very least, a week before you start your new job if you're moving post-grad, to give yourself just time to get acquainted, settle in as much as you can, because settling in takes definitely more than a week, I'd say. But I feel like if you're in a time crunch, at least a week is a good amount of time to just familiarize yourself with where you're at. But if you can push your move-in date even further in advance before your work start date, obviously we would recommend that, because you'll get a lot more time to get acquainted to the city, get familiar with your work commute, things like that. So as much time as you can give yourself, do that. When doing research for this, I also saw on TikTok that people recommend setting your start date not your start date, your move-in date at the end of the month, because occupancy people at the complexes or whatever have like a quota to meet every month. And so like the last few weeks of the month is when they'll do like deals and specials for apartments, and like give you like a certain amount off of your rent for the first few months or something like that. I personally don't know if that's true. I never really tried that and obviously didn't know that, but if that's something that piques your interest, girl, save a couple $100 and try and see if you can set your move-in date at the end of the month and see what specials they'll give you. I would also recommend, if you can, setting your move-in date to like winter times, because those are less popular months, obviously, for people to be moving, because hello, nobody wants to do that in the cold. I did it in the cold and it was a humbling experience. But yeah, you could probably save like a couple $100 doing that as well if you're willing and able to do so. So look into that when you're apartment hunting as well. Okay, so apartment hunting. You got all the websites that you can look at when hunting for your apartment. You've got your lists of wants and needs for your future place. You've got your list of questions to ask when going on tours and exploring these new places. All right. Feel like we got a good baseline, okay? Okay, now let's talk about budgeting, because moving, that can be expensive. Especially if you're moving post-grad and your company doesn't give you like relocation money and you have to pay a lot of that stuff out of pocket. Yeah, your bank account will be crying. Not gonna lie. But there are some ways that you can save some money that we'll talk about. So obviously, if you have relocation money within like your offer package from your company, great. Start there. But if you don't, I definitely recommend, if you can, ask family and friends to like contribute to your moving fund. Because you're starting this new chapter of your life. Obviously they want to support you and help you grow. And some people will be willing to help. So definitely try. I know it can be weird and nerve-wracking asking family and friends for money, but I don't know, it's hard out here, and family, you gotta stick together, okay? So if that's something that you're comfortable with, try doing that. There's also an app that my friend recommended called Digit, Digit, and that helps you save a few bucks every day. So definitely recommend that if you're trying to save up money for your move. I'm going to release a full episode in the future on saving and budgeting in your 20s, so definitely follow on all streaming platforms for when that is released, but we're just going to talk a little bit about moving specifically today. When considering budgeting for a move, it can be daunting to think about, because it seems like you have like so much to move and so much to do. So if you feel like that, start off with like a stream of consciousness, listing out everything that you're probably going to need to pay for your move. So for example, I had like my car, and I had like my clothes / all of my belongings, whatever. And saying that out loud, that's like two things. So it's not that much, at least for me. But if you have like a lot of things, just start listing things out. And then you can start categorizing your budget line items into different categories or buckets. I think one easy way to think about this is like before, during, and after you move again. So like when considering this in a budget format, you can think about before expenses. So like your rent, deposit, utilities, because that's usually things that you set up before moving to said new place. With enduring, you have your movers, you have your packaging, so like the boxes that you're moving with, insurance if you're going to pay for like, you know, your things to be insured as they're moving from place to place, and then after. So that's like internet, food, toiletries, things that you worry about once you get to where you're going. So I think that's a good way to think about it if you're trying to figure out your budget for your move. You could also do like general buckets like transportation, car, supplies, etc., etc. But I think the before, during, and after way is such like a easier way to think about it. Not my camera video stopping. Okay, anyways. I don't remember where I left off at, but I think the before, during, and after categorization of expenses is probably an easier and less overwhelming way for you to think about budgeting for your move, because then you know what you need to worry about at any given time because it's categorized chronologically. Duh, hello. Okay, so now you're starting to budget, you're starting to plug in all your numbers. You're using your relocation package if you can to see how much everything's going to cost, how much that relocation package is covering versus how much you might have to pay out of pocket. Or if you're paying everything out of pocket, you're starting to see how much things are going to cost. You're starting to figure out how to save for that. And you have a good baseline of the monies that are involved. Okay. So now let's talk about actually moving in / settling in and getting into your place. So let's start off with money saving tips, because the physical moving can be like the most expensive part, especially if you're paying for movers and paying for their labor. But obviously, a way to mitigate that and save some money is to get yourself a little U-Haul and drive that truck to wherever you're going, okay? Get yourself whatever size you need, load her up, and do it yourself. Which is obviously going to be laborious on you, but if you want to save money, you got to do what you got to do. You could also, if you don't have a lot of stuff, get a pod, which is like, I don't know if you've seen them on the street before, but they're just big white containers that say pod, and they're like moving something in red text or whatever. So basically, like, you can load all of your stuff up in that, and then that will get shipped to wherever you're going. They'll drop it off on the street, and then you like unload it whenever you get there. That could be a super great way to save money as well, but definitely check at like your apartment complex if those things are allowed on your street, because then that could become a whole thing and you don't want to deal with that. So definitely look into that if that's something that you can do. Obviously, get rid of as many of your belongings as you can before moving, because moving with less things obviously saves you more money. So start selling things, giving them away to family and friends. If you can't part with your things, if they spark you too much joy, as Miss Marie Kondo said, and you want to keep things, you can put them in a storage unit where at home, and just leave them there until you come back. But girl, honestly, let it go. Sell that stuff. Get rid of it. You're starting your new life already, so you know, might as well get rid of as much as you can and just start fresh, you know? If you are taking a bunch of stuff and it doesn't fit in, you know, whatever you're using at the time, you can take as much as you can to your new place and then ask family and friends to ship some of your stuff as well to your new place. That's also an option if you are overloaded. Another money saving tip that I saw on TikTok when doing research for this was hiring movers to meet you at your location rather than hiring the movers to physically move between two places. So if you go on U-Haul's website and click on moving labor, it's a marketplace that will essentially connect you to local movers at wherever you're at, and they'll help you like unload your stuff and actually put it in your apartment. So say you have like, you know, a big old TV stand and you need to get it from your U-Haul or whatever up into your apartment. You can have them do that rather than move from one place to another. That's obviously easier if you're moving between two cities like within the same state, but if you did a cross-country move like myself, that actually also may be a good option, especially if you're doing it by yourself, and you need some help. That would probably be a super great resource for you. If you want to save money on like packing supplies, I recommend buying or like using suitcases to pack up your things instead of like buying the physical cardboard boxes or whatever and shipping those. Because if you have a suitcase, oh my gosh, I didn't do this. And now I'm having like a moment because I had big old cardboard boxes and I shipped them from Texas to Ohio. And some of them got damaged. Like some of the freaking boxes had rips in them and some of my things broke. It wasn't a lot of stuff, but it was just like, inconvenient. Because I also remember we had to go pick them up at the freaking, what was it, UPS facility because they weren't at my leasing office. And it was this whole thing because I had to call UPS like 10,000 times. And it was just, wow. And I remember it snowed that day too. Ooh, girl. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. So, wow. But anyways, back to the suitcases thing. I would recommend, if you can, packing your things up in suitcases, obviously probably within like the 50-pound limit, and like flying to your place. Because then you only spend like $30 on each thing. If it's like, say you're just packing your clothes, right? You're spending $30 on a suitcase for your plane rather than spending, I don't know, maybe $50 to ship it all. I don't know. That feels like it would be a money saving thing if you're flying rather than like shipping all that stuff. That is what I did actually, because I flew from Texas to Ohio. Okay, it's coming back to me, y'all. It's been a year and a half since I've done it. Okay, so the memories are coming back. But I remember flying with my suitcases and packing as much clothes as I could in them. It was me, my dad, and my mom. My dad and I came to Ohio first, and we had suitcases. And then my mom came with more suitcases. And that was like all my clothes and shoes, or as much as my clothes and shoes as we could pack in them. So we came with that. And then like the rest of my stuff, we bought and like had them packaged in big old boxes and then shipped here. Okay, it's coming back to me. So that's a way for you to mitigate costs, is to split between like using suitcases and like shipping in boxes. Okay, period. A couple more packing tips that I have for your move. One, use saran wrap to like protect your valuables, protect your things. That's like a easy, affordable way to like get your things protected, I guess. Put air tags in all of your items or anything that you're shipping / traveling with, basically, because you want to keep track of everything and make sure that it gets to where you're going. I have a little bit of PTSD from traveling over the past 2 years or so and having my luggage lost and not arriving to my destination when I arrive. So now I am an AirTag stan. So if you can, get yourself an AirTag, or if you have a Samsung, get whatever the Samsung version is and track your things, girl, because it is a hassle to try and get things when they're lost, and you might not even know where it is if you don't have an AirTag in it. So track your things. When packing up your stuff, divide everything by rooms / categories so that once you get to where you're going, you can just plop that box in its designated spot so it's easier for you to unpack. So if you got all your bathroom things in one box, plop that girly in the bathroom and start unpacking. Separate by kitchen, bedroom, living room, blah, blah, blah. That will just make your life unpacking so much easier. Last tip, save those little adverts that you get in the mail, yeah? Those little advertisements for restaurants in your area, or like coupon books or magazines, whatever. Basically paper that you get in the mail that you don't even read and immediately throw in the trash as soon as you get in your house. Start saving those up and use that like your saran wrap for protecting your items. So like you can wrap your mugs in that, any ceramics. You can use that to fill in spaces within boxes, because obviously when you're shipping boxes, you don't want them to be light, especially if it's a big box. They're gonna stack things on top of that big box, obviously. So fill up the space with those little papers, so that your box is like packed tightly and compactly, and your things won't break like mine did. So please protect your things, save up that paper so you don't have to buy bubble wrap. Also, I'm not like a moving expert. This is just me speaking from my own experience. But if you do a little search on Google or TikTok, there are like plenty of tips that you will find on money saving for moving and things like that. Some of which I referred to in this episode, but there are plenty more if you do your research. But moving into the list of things that you need to do before you move, I recommend putting this in like Google Docs or in your notes app. Just start by making a list of things you're going to have to move when you're obviously moving to a new city. So for example, for like your billing address on your credit card, you might want to change that to your new address, or setting up your utilities. That's something that you probably need to do before getting into your unit. So write in a Google Doc or in your notes app your new address at the very top, and then under that list everything that you'll probably need to change, because girl, it might be a lot. Honestly, you forget like things that have your address. For example, your credit card, or I don't know, your Amazon account, things like that. Those are things that you will obviously want to have, and things that you could probably worry about later once you're in your unit, but there's some things that you need to set up in advance. Like I said, your utilities, probably your internet, that you might want to start thinking about before you get to where you're going. Okay, so now let's talk about settling in and when you first get to your apartment. First thing you need to do, girl, is deep clean, because you don't know what is going to be there. Obviously, the apartment complex is supposed to clean before the new person moves in, but they might not do the best job, and you will still find like hair or God knows what in the apartment unit. So deep clean. If that's something that you can splurge on as well, get professional cleaners to do that. Get professional cleaners to do that. It was just me and my mom cleaning when we moved in, or when I moved in, I guess. And you know, we was finding hair in the drawers. We was finding stains, girl. Ooh, it was a little bit nasty, but glad we cleaned it before I started to move in all my stuff, and then would discover that nasty stuff later. So deep clean that, girl. Cleaning supplies, they're going to be the first things that you need, okay? If you're religious, sprinkle your holy water. Spiritual, light your sage. Do whatever you need to do to cleanse your space and set yourself up for success, okay? After that, turn on absolutely everything. Turn on all of your lights. Turn on your air conditioning, your heater, and your water, especially your water, girl. Because when I moved in, I remember my dad and I got here and we were like, you know, unpacking, doing things. We had turned on the water and we're using it for things or whatever, I guess cleaning, I don't know. But there was this smell in the air, and it smelled like rotten eggs. And we were like, what is this smell? I was like, I cannot live here if it's going to smell like this all the time. And we discovered that it was the water. My water stank like rotten eggs, girl. It was nasty. Every time it turned on, it would fill up the air. And so I had to call maintenance. They came the next day, 2 days later, whatever. There was this filter or something that was messed up, and they fixed it. God bless, didn't have to pay because the maintenance was included in the complex, whatever. But that's something that you want to be cognizant of when you first move in. So turn on your water, make sure it don't stink, because you don't want to be brushing your teeth with that. But yeah, it was that was humbling. In addition to that, like I mentioned earlier, put all of your respective boxes in their respective rooms if you labeled them by room, because that's going to make your life easier. So put your bathroom box in the bathroom. Put your kitchen box in the kitchen. Put your bedroom box in the bedroom. So then you don't see all these boxes piled up in one place in your apartment and be overwhelmed by looking at a big old stack of things. You'll have everything where it needs to go, and that'll make unpacking so much easier. Okay, so the first few things that you're going to need when you get there are Wi-Fi, utilities, which are usually set up through the city. So that's going to be something that you got to think about in advance, girl. Renter's insurance, which is sometimes something that you need to set up before you move in as well. So look into that for your specific apartment complex that you're moving to. An air mattress, which is, I would say, I guess a nice to have. Well, actually, no, not a nice to have, because you may or may not have a mattress when you first move in. So get yourself a cheap little air mattress from Walmart, and keep that for the first week or so that you're living, because hello, where are you going to sleep? On the floor? I mean, you can if you want. If that's your prerogative, girl. If you want to sleep on your floor, do that. But I would like for you to get an air mattress if that's what you want. Because future facing, say someone comes over and they need a place to sleep. Now you got an air mattress. This is so random, but I would also recommend getting at least one chair if you don't have any furniture, which I didn't when I was moving in. I had one chair that myself and my parents were rotating sitting on because we were like building all of my stuff, building all of my furniture, unpacking all of my things, but there was like nowhere to sit, and we were tired because we were moving and doing all this stuff all day, but there was nowhere to sit. We had to sit on the floor or rotate between this one chair that I had. So if that's your situation, get one cheap little plastic chair from Walmart or the Dollar Tree or wherever, because you're gonna be tired, girl. Or sit on the floor. I mean, you can do that too, because hey, save money, live better. But ooh, we were tired, and my floors are hardwood, so it wasn't like, it was not comfortable. So yeah, we needed those chairs. We needed those chairs. And then lastly, you're going to need groceries. So start in advance making your list of groceries of what you're going to need when you first get there. This is you basically buying groceries for the first time as an adult, right? So like there's going to be a lot of things that you probably forget, that like say there are things that live in your fridge all the time, but it's not something that you buy like on the regular, like ketchup. That's not something that you buy every time you go to the grocery store. Or like salt, you know what I mean? Or vinegar or something like that. I will try and come up with a list of like groceries for when you're grocery shopping for like the very first time when you move into your apartment. I just said that really fast. When you move into your apartment for the first time, and keep that housed on the podcast website. But start thinking about that in advance, before you move, so that you don't have to make a million trips to the grocery store. But honestly, you probably will, and don't fret, because hey, you're moving. There's a lot of things to think about, and it's fine if you go to Target or Walmart or Kroger or wherever 10,000 times, because that is just the reality, sister. One reminder that I want to give you in the whole midst of this is that you will probably be living around boxes for a while, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. It depends. There's no like perfect timeline, because it takes a while to settle in, to get familiar with your space, especially if it's a place that you've never been before. It is a process. It is a process to make a house a home, especially if you are by yourself, doing everything for the first time by yourself. Oh my gosh, scared for the first time. Hello. Hope I don't get copyrighted for that. But it's just a process, and there's no ideal timeline. Maybe some other girly on TikTok got her apartment all the way together in like a week, and she got all her decor up, and she got a really nice rug and a really nice coffee table, and you are still sitting on the floor eating your dinner on a cardboard box. There's no shame in that. There is no shame in that. It takes time, and everyone's timeline is different. So just remember that when you're moving. Okay, I think we talked about everything you need to know when moving. So let's circle back to our 4 questions from the top. So the questions were, where are you going? We talked about apartment hunting, right? If you need any more tips, go to TikTok, go to the internet. The internet is there for you to use, girl. Question number 2, how are you getting there? So we talked about different methods that you can use for the actual moving part. Movers, U-Haul, doing things yourself, the pods, via plane, train, boat, blah, 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 whatever. You know, different ways to get to point A from point B, but I gave you the money saving tips, okay? Question number 3, how is your stuff getting there? We talked again about the U-Hauls, about the pods, about the suitcases, all that fun stuff. Okay. And then lastly, question number 4, what are the essentials you need when you're there? So we talked about things you'll probably need to set up in advance before you move, or at least within the first week when you move. This will all be detailed in the show notes / on the podcast website, so that it's easy for you to refer back to. But now I feel like we have all of the tactical tools that we need to move, right? We have everything, at least from a baseline understanding POV. There'll probably be nuance for maybe specific city that you're moving to. Everyone's situation is different, but hopefully this gives you like a good guideline or jumping off point for your move. Okay, amazing. I hope you feel good. I hope this is a good guide that helps you through the moving process, at least with like all the tactical tools, like I said. But if you're still scared to move, obviously that is so valid, because moving is a big life change that can affect so many aspects of our lives. And I'll be talking about that in episode 2. We're going to be talking about when you're scared to move, how to deal with those feelings, how to cope, especially if you're, for example, going to be away from family for the first time. That can be a whole thing, but we're going to talk about all the fears that come with moving in the next episode. So be sure to follow Transplants on all streaming platforms, as well as on all social media platforms. And yeah, that is the end of episode 1 of Transplants, the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. Please be sure to leave a positive review, if so, on whatever streaming platform you're listening to. And I will see you guys, or talk to you guys, in the next episode. Bye.